Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching how to paint this beginner ocean landscape. Without further ado, let's get painting. For today's watercolor video, I'm going to be using Antwerp Blue, Naples Yellow, VanDyke Brown, Viridian Green, and Sap Green by Winsor & Newton. I also have some white gouache to use as well to add some details to our waves. And then I'm using a size 2, 12, and 6 Princeton round brush. To get started, I am going to use a little bit of Antwerp Blue just to do a sketch line at halfway across the painting. And this is just to be my kind of guiding point for where our water is going to be. And next, I'm going to take my size 12 larger brush, and I'm just going to do a wash of water from this water line all the way down. And then from here, I'm going to take some Antwerp Blue, and I am just going to do a wash of this color, heavier towards the right side of the water line, going about 1.5 inches down. And then as it gets more narrow towards here, I'm just going to apply a light amount of pigment here. All right, and while that's still slightly wet, I'm just gonna clean my brush off and just take some plain water just to add to this transition area where the water and the blue are meeting here of the white of the paper. And then I'm gonna take just a touch of VanDyke Brown, and I am going to just use my brush to do kind of this left to right, slightly curved motion, mimicking the curvature of the shore. And I'm gonna leave a little bit of a white gap, as you can see here. It's more subtle, but I'm just gonna leave that be as our transition area between the blue and the sand. And while this water is still slightly wet, I'm gonna grab a little bit of Viridian Green, and I just wanna add a few loose just touches with my size 6 brush here, allowing it to just kind of bleed out and give just a little bit of a pop of variety of blues and greens in this colored area of the ocean. Next, I'm going to take some Antwerp Blue, and I really want to define this water line, so I'm going to add a nice concentrated amount of Antwerp Blue towards the top. From here, I'm just gonna rinse my brush and tap it on a paper towel, and then just lightly help guide this transition of the dark blue into the water below, just by doing a little bit of pressure with my brush and just dragging it down slightly. And then from here, I'm gonna take just a little bit more Antwerp Blue and just do a few touches of it to give a little bit of variety of the texture of the ocean. And then from here, I am just gonna do a really light brush stroke of Antwerp Blue in this white area. And I'm keeping it super loose and variegated, so it's got some rough edges to it. It's not perfectly straight, but this is just gonna kind of mimic a divide between two waves that are coming onto shore. More like just a subtle whitewash. And then I'm just gonna smooth out this water line here. And then from here, I want to start to kind of build our sky just a little bit. So I am going to take a little bit of water to start. And I'm using my size 12 brush here. And I'm not going to quite touch the blue just yet because it's probably still a little bit wet, but I'm just barely going along that line. Okay, and now I'm going to take some Naples Yellow, and I'm just going to do a wash of this color all the way across for about the first inch. And then from here, I'm just gonna take some Antwerp Blue and do just a really pale dusty wash of blue. And then in between these two transitions of color, I'm just gonna take some plain water and just apply the clean, plain water in this transition area. All right, I'm gonna let the sky just set and hang out for a bit. And then moving on, I wanna start to add just some more details to our water and to the beach. So I'm gonna switch gears to my size 6 brush, and I'm gonna use some white gouache to add some of our whitewash here. And using our size 6 brush, I'm gonna start with some just simple variegated texture here, mimicking the waves. And it's slightly thicker as it's closer to the right side of the page, but as we get towards the left, it'll kind of thin out a little bit. Okay, so I'm just gonna apply really light pressure as I make my way towards the edge of this shoreline towards the far left. And then from here, I just want to do a second layer of waves or whitewash. And the second layer is going to have some curvature to it. And again, I'm just using the tip of my brush, just tapping. Maybe some of this wave will overlap slightly with the one above it there. And then it just connects and joins and thins out towards the left. Alrighty, and then from here, I'm gonna rinse off my brush and switch gears to our size 2 round brush. And for this, I'm going to take some more whitewash, and I want to add just a little bit of texture to our water here. And I am simply just going to do some kind of dry brush technique here, just using the belly of the size 2 brush. And just going across here to add some really subtle, loose highlights. Just in kind of a horizontal kind of brushwork going left to right. And as we get a little bit more towards the top of the ocean here, the highlights are going to be a little bit daintier since they're more off in the distance. But having a dry brush does help get that kind of really loose, variegated highlight texture. And then again, as it gets closer to us, the highlights are a little bit more broad. And then from here, I'm going to take my size 2 brush and just add a little bit more finer texture alongside the edges of the waves. Just using the tip of the brush just to texturize and give a little bit more detail to the whitewash here. So I'm just going along that whitewash edge and just adding a little bit more loose brush strokes just to buff it out a little bit so it's not as smooth. All right, so next I'm just gonna take a little bit of Antwerp Blue with my size 2 brush, and I wanna add a little bit more depth to the ocean here. So I'm just gonna take some Antwerp Blue and do a few bits of texture using a little bit more of a dark blue, a concentration of the darker blue with the Antwerp, and just adding a few more details using the same kind of technique that we did when we added our whitewash highlights. And then just in this wave here, I'm just going to add a few touches of the Antwerp Blue, just kind of poking through a little bit. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of water to help buff out some of that blue and blend it up a little. Okay, so next up, I want to add, with my size 6 brush, just a little bit more details to our sandy beach. So I'm going to start by just adding a little bit of a curved line here using our VanDyke Brown. So I'm just doing a really subtle curve just to outline the shore, leaving a little bit of a gap where the sand meets the first wave here. And then from here, I'm just using the belly of my brush just to texturize the sandy beach, just adding some more detail and texture so that way it's not flat and perfectly smooth. And then from here, I'm going to take just a really small amount of the VanDyke Brown, and I just want to go along the edge of the wave and just outline in a few areas the edge of it here, just to give it a little bit more definition. And then I'm just going to take my brush and just slightly buff that out with some clean water. And then I'm just going to take my brush here and just tap and do just a few little bits of the VanDyke Brown that'll just add a little bit more detail and texture to the beach. Just a few to just pop out a little bit and stand out. Okay, last but not least, that's how it goes. I'm going to take some Sap Green and just paint the edge of a little bit of the coast here. And it's angled higher towards the left and then swoops down and flattens as it gets closer to the ocean here. And then I'm just going to color that in with the Sap Green all the way to the edge of the ocean. Giving the top a nice loose and rough texture with lots of curves. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of the Antwerp Blue and just give some shading and depth to it by painting some of that blue layered on the bottom. And just adding some texture. I'm next going to take a little bit of VanDyke Brown and just layer that on top of some of the blue and towards the bottom of where the coastline meets the ocean. And then I'm just going to take the tip of my brush and add just a little bit of texture. Right up towards the top here. I hope that you enjoyed today's watercolor beginner ocean landscape tutorial. Be sure to like this video and check out my other watercolor landscape videos on my channel and subscribe so you don't miss any further watercolor tutorials.